Many diabetics were in a pre-diabetic state for years and years before being diagnosed as diabetic. And then the dam broke and their blood sugar was off to the races. Can that surge of high glucose be turned around? Today we'll be looking at the story of Nicole Dixon, who did just that. Recently, I interviewed a lovely lady named Nicole Dixon who has a powerful testimony of thoroughly whipping diabetes. Nicole is 50 years old, and for the last several years she's been at a pre-diabetic state. And then this last November, she was shocked when a doctor's fasting glucose test read above 260.
And so at that point, I walked out of his office and I thought to myself, well, that couldn't possibly be right. Why would it be 265? Then I started thinking to myself, well, like maybe I ate. And I was like, no, I didn't eat anything. That appointment was at 9 o'clock in the morning. You're not a morning person. You did not eat. So at that point, I contacted my my provider, like my normal provider. And I said, hey, my blood sugar is 265. And they were like, okay, well, let's get you back in here and let's make sure you're fasting for sure. And we're going to do the comprehensive metabolic panel, and we're going to do an A1C test. And, fast, don't eat after this time, and then come back to our office on this date, and we'll go ahead and do those tests.
Okay.
So then that happened within I think a day and a half, because it was towards the end of the day when I contacted them about that first result. So I went and I had the fasting tests, and I had, and so that second result came back at a 203 fasting blood sugar, and then the A1C was a 7.1.
Now, I found that interesting. The two numbers didn't even really seem to correspond. A 203 milligrams per deciliter as an average would result in an A1C of about 8.7 if that were your average over the last 3 months. A 265, the number she had previously as a fasting glucose, would result in an A1C of 10.8 if that were the average. But keep in mind that the A1C test measures glucose levels over the last 3 to 4 months. And what this means is that it seems likely Nicole's glucose levels were on their way into the stratosphere. She was right then in the process of a metabolic breakdown. What this could likely mean is that if she did not do something to intervene in this metabolic meltdown, her next A1C could well have been at 11 or higher. But that did not happen. Like so many diabetics, Nicole had a history of diabetes in her family.
Well, by this point, my late father had diabetes, my mother as well, my late mother as well, even though she didn't find out until she had a stroke. And then I have a sister here in Kentucky with me who was just diagnosed about maybe a year and a half ago.
Even though she had family members with diabetes, Nicole assumed it would not happen to her.
At first it was hard, and I think that the thing that made it the hardest was I had thought I had beat all that. I thought, oh, well, I'm on the thinner side, and I've been eating everything I want, and they all have high blood pressure and high diabetes, and you don't. And I guess it wasn't until I was diagnosed with it that it kind of hit me after the fact that my best course would have been to do the things I'm doing now then. So then I would have never gotten the diabetes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my prevention wasn't that the doctor wasn't telling me that I had it, that the blood tests were fine. The prevention would have been eating and, doing the things that I do now all along.
The doctor gave Nicole permission to take 3 months to get her glucose levels down without medication, but also gave her some bad news. According to the doctor, things were only going to get worse.
She suggested 500 milligrams of metformin, and I had said to her, is it possible that I could just take 3 months and attempt to do some diet and exercise and see if I don't need medication. And she said I could. And then she did tell me, she said, even if you're able to get your numbers down, that as you get older and you were to gain weight and stuff, or even if you keep doing the same thing that you're doing and you get the numbers down, as you get older, you will find the numbers will start creeping up because it's a progressive condition.
Nicole's doctor admitted that she had noticed that in her last several glucose tests, her numbers, although not diabetic, were on the high side, but strangely had said nothing.
She did mention in our talk, she said, I had noticed that your numbers were higher, but I thought maybe you had eaten something. So that made me really upset that she had noticed that my blood sugar numbers were greater than 100, but she just made the assumption that I must have eaten something instead of bringing that up and doing further testing 6 months ago or a year ago.
Nicole, like so many who thoroughly beat diabetes, did a lot of research. She browsed various websites and looked at a number of YouTube videos.
Well, at first I was watching, I started with like a lot of YouTube videos. And at first I kind of settled on like Dr. Eric Berg, and I settled on that Sten Ekberg, Dr. Ekberg.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did see, because I started thinking like, okay, I need to cut out sugar. And at first I'm thinking like, junk food and things like that. So then I did settle on like a lot of videos with like Dr. Sarah, like I think it's Halberg or Halliburg.
Right.
And then one time somehow I came across one of your videos and I watched it. And then I think once I got maybe about a month and a half in, I pretty much only watched your videos. And then there was a point too where I like to sleep with background noise, and it's usually a movie. So I would just kind of line up your videos in a queue on YouTube, and I would just fall asleep listening to your videos. And I think it really, really helped because it kind of gave me the determination to try to fix my issue. And then I also started just doing research, looking at ADA research, going to their website, going to, different people's website, like Cleveland Clinic, for instance. One of their websites says that even if your fasting blood sugar is like 90 or above, it can still put you at risk of like cardiovascular issues, like, as time goes on. So I'm like, okay, so, how can I get my fasting blood sugar to be, below 90? So I was just searching out information everywhere.
It didn't take long before she realized that her diet was going to have to change.
And then as far as nutrition was concerned, of course, I knew I had to get rid of the stuff that I was very heavily relying on. It's like I'm a sugarholic. And then, just getting to the nitty gritty of understanding that even the brown rice and things like that were not going to be good for me.
Nicole thought of herself as a pretty healthy eater, but as she describes the diet she was eating during those years before becoming diabetic, well, actually, it was pretty bad.
Pretty much all of it. It's like, I feel like I'm a healthy eater, but I also have a junk food, sweet tooth. So it would be nothing for me to get up and eat what I consider to be healthy. So I'd get up and I would have like maybe some scrambled eggs and maybe some fruit. At the time, I thought this was healthy, some fruit and maybe like a piece of toast. And then like right after meals like that, I could go immediately, like if I walked into the office and someone said, hey, we bought some donuts, I could go immediately over there and eat 2 of those donuts.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I was working a lot and I was kind of like not at a point where I could take a break, I would go to someone's candy dish, get 6 or 7 little mini candy bars, eat that. And then lunchtime would roll around and we would go to, places like there's this one place where they have like chicken and waffles. I would go there, and this is after eating the 2 donuts and the eggs and all that. I'd go there and I would have like, 2 pieces of chicken, a big old waffle with syrup and butter. And then these people, this restaurant that I like also sells like mini jars of like pie. So it'll be like an Oreo pie or banana cream pie. And I would get one of those for later. So then around 3 or 3:30, I would eat that little, jar of pie. And then I would go home. And if I felt like cooking, I would cook something. Or if I didn't feel like cooking, I would say, okay, well, I'm just going to eat like a sundae, and I'd get out my ice cream, and I'd, get 2 or 3 scoops of ice cream with some hot fudge, some nuts, and a cherry, and whipped cream, and I would eat all that.
But once she saw the direction she had to go in order to defeat diabetes, she was all in.
Well, I'm going to tell you, because this all happened in November, so you have to think. We had Thanksgiving come up. We had Christmas. I turned 50 on January the 4th. We had New Year's Eve or New Year's Day on January the 1st. And in between those holidays, I had already committed to going to what's called a Friendsgiving and a winter wine walk.
Okay.
So I had all these events coming up. And at first, the Friendsgiving, it was like at a friend's house, and it was like, 8 of us ladies. And I thought, I'm not going to go. And then I said to myself, no, if this is my life, I have to learn to live in this world with this condition. I'm going. So I went to this Friendsgiving. There was wine flowing, there was desserts, there was Cornish hens, there was chicken and dumplings, there was baked macaroni and cheese and rolls. And I went there and I brought like a meat and cheese platter, and I ate meat and cheese. And then when it came to the dinner, I had the Cornish hen, I had the green beans, I had the salad without croutons, I had water, no wine. And for dessert, I bought 2 squares of 70% chocolate, and that's what I had.
Nicole began to measure her glucose regularly with a blood sugar meter and found this provided tremendous insight and tremendous motivation to toe the line.
Well, one thing I learned is there was a point where I ate like 3 Milton's crackers with some cheese. And this is at the very beginning. And about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, my blood sugar was like 180 something. Mm-hmm. And what I learned is, for me, I don't know if it works that way for everybody, is when I would hit a large number like that, it almost takes a couple of days before I start to see regular numbers again. And so once I did that, those crackers were gone. And then there was one other incident, because between November 7th and today, I've not had anything like, candy, cookies, whatever. But in December, I was giving the people that like my team members that I supervise, I gave them their Christmas presents, and I brought in donuts. And that was like December the 1st or December, I don't know what date it was. And I was like, I'm gonna join them. I'm gonna eat half a donut. Half a donut can't do any harm. And I ate that half a donut and went and checked my blood sugar, and it was like 170 off a half a donut. And I was like, okay, well, those donuts, you can't even eat half a donut. It's like, look what it's doing.
Despite a couple of incidents where she ate things she probably should not have eaten, on most days Nicole was very strict in limiting her carbs, not only sugar, but also starches. Her numbers began to drop and drop. 3 months later, it was time for her to go back to her doctor and have her glucose checked. And the results were a night and day difference.
And so at that point, and they also did the fasting blood sugar. So my fasting blood sugar was 87, and my A1C was a 4.5.
Wow. Nicole's A1C of 4.5 was so outstanding, it made her doctor a little bit nervous.
I was very pleased. Now, my doctor, she ended up, even though it's a 3-month test, she ended up wanting to test it again in March, the A1C. So I had another one, because she was like, it's fine, because my hospital's chart starts at 4.8 as normal. So she's like, 4.5 is fine, but I just want to make sure that it won't drop lower than that. So she advised like to eat some, quinoa and all that kind of stuff. And I said, okay. And then she said, let's just try it again in 1 month and see if, make sure it doesn't fall lower. So I did it again in March, and it was the same result, 4.5.
Nicole was so thrilled at her own success, she tried to make a convert out of her sister, who also had diabetes.
My sister, who has diabetes as well. I would tell her some things, and I felt like she was getting a little snappy with me. So I was like, okay, she's getting snappy. So don't say anything else. You try. So then before I got my test result, she was like, yeah, it probably went down some. It probably went down to maybe like a 6.1 or, whatever. And I was like, okay. And then when I got the test result, she says to me one day, she's like, what's the name of that guy that's your videos you're watching again? And I said, oh, his name is Dennis Pollock.
Oh, wow.
And she told me the other day, she said, I don't think I could ever get it down to 4.5, but she's like, I'm going to get mine back into the fives again.
She describes the difference between her new low-carb diet and her previous standard American diet. In other words, the standard diabetic diet.
The way that I eat now, it's like I eat my protein and I'm eating my healthy fats. I eat my avocado, I have my coconut oil, I have my nuts, seeds, my cream cheese, my heavy cream. I feel like the hunger is different. It's not an overwhelming hunger. It's like it's a more controlled hunger. I don't ever feel like I'm deprived of anything. And I don't feel like before where I could eat a really big carb-loaded meal and I would still have all this room to eat like, a piece of cake and ice cream. And it's different. It's a different type of hunger.
So there you have it. Nicole Dixon is one of many, many others who found that it is lifestyle and primarily diet that leads you into diabetes, and it is a changed lifestyle and a changed diet that can lead you right out of diabetes. Nicole was never seriously overweight, and at the age of 50, she's probably younger than most who are diagnosed with diabetes, but she was headed for a metabolic train wreck and managed to stave it off and turn things around by slashing the carbs in her diet. And that not only included sugar, but also starches like pasta, rice, potatoes, bread, and breakfast cereal. Now, will Nicole's plan work for you? Well, I cannot guarantee it, but I can say it is the same plan that has worked for me and thousands of others who have seen the light about diabetes. And when you think about it, it is incredibly encouraging to realize there are things you can do to change your situation. You do not have to sit around singing "Nobody Knows the Troubles I've Seen." Rise up out of your lethargy. Make some good choices about the food you eat and the foods you refuse. Do some exercise and dare to believe that you too can beat diabetes.